So good morning everyone to this new tech talk. Today we are talking about the NWA110AX and the complete portfolio that Zyxel is offering, as well as we are talking about Wi-Fi 6 and wait no more. So what can we do to really have a fast transition? And with me I have here Patrick Hirscher. Welcome, Patrick.
Hello and welcome. Thank you.
And we have Philipp Pires.
Hello.
Phil is our senior technical engineer in our support campus environment, and Patrick is our MDM for wireless in Europe. So how are you doing today?
Perfect.
All good?
Perfect. Happy to be here. Can't wait no more to start the session.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just would like to highlight, if you have any questions during the session, please use the question window. I have that on my screen here, and I will then either read it out or give you an answer directly. Let's see. You have the presentation also on handouts in this webinar environment. And having said that, I would like to guide you through the agenda for today. So we first talk about the market trends, where AX is going, what Zyxel can offer. We talk about the portfolio. We will deep dive then into the NWA110AX. Also compare it a bit to other access points that we have. And then we have our two areas which we address specifically. This is the solution window and the feedback session that we want to share with you. Having said that, over to Patrick. Patrick, what is AX doing in Europe and what is our portfolio doing?
Yeah, so at the end, AX is really booming and ramping up in EMEA, but not all in EMEA. Yeah, that's really clear. I want to show you the wireless trends in EMEA. Yeah, so what is the development by launching AX in 2019? Yeah, and also how is our deployment or development at Zyxel? Yeah, so if we're looking into the wireless trends for EMEA-wide, yeah, so you can see the technology split between AC, Wave 2, and AX standard, yeah. So you can see AX is really ramping up by beginning of 2019, and as you can see, at the moment, so year to date, yeah, 49% of the technology share belongs to AX already, yeah. So that's a massive technology jump, yeah. I could remember out of the past, it was when we launched 5 gigahertz, yeah. There was also this big jump because everybody was waiting for the new technology.
True.
And this is also what happened here with AX, yeah.
And we see more and more clients are supporting the standard.
Correct, yeah.
That's very important.
So all the other vendors for end clients on smartphone, tablets, and also on laptops, yeah, or even IPTV, yeah, there's also already built in an AX wireless card, yeah. And now the interesting part is how is Zyxel developing, yeah. And let me show it to you, yeah. It looks really similar. So at the end, at Zyxel side, 47% of the technology belongs to AX as well at Zyxel, yeah. So the trend is nearly the same what we can see on the EMEA side. So that means we are really on a good track to say it was the right time when we start to launch our AX portfolio. As you could remember, in 2020, we launched time by time the new AX AP. Yeah, so we have a really strong AX portfolio where we can cover the smart entry level up to high-end development for education, hospitality, and all the other stuff. Yeah, so let me share quick the portfolio that we have already in the channel market. Yeah, so you can see the different devices starting from the NWA110AX. You can also see the different specs there. So what are the antennas are built in there? What is the LAN port? And even which kind of control is possible. Yeah, so you can see Nebula Flex Pro. So that means the NWA110AX can only be installed or managed in standalone mode or over our Nebula Control Management Center. And Nebula Flex Pro also means you can even manage it with a hardware AP controller that's on our gateways. Yeah, and as you can see, we also looks to different specification, different areas for projecting, like the NWA 210AX or the WEX 610D or the WEX 65OS. You can see we also give them multi-gig port. So we are not only focusing on 1 gigabit uplink port, we are also focusing on the multi-gig side with 2.5 gig or even 5 gig uplink. That means in the background you need a multi-gig switch. That's really clear. If you want to join or to have the whole benefit of this multi-gig uplink port. But as you can see, the whole portfolio fits for every requirement for our partners. And why we are here in the Tech Talk, that's why I marked a red square. It's the NWA 110 as our starting entry model, which can be really used for even for small businesses. That's really clear. But even into retail stores or cafes, restaurants, where you don't really have this such big network environment, but you want to offer maybe a guest Wi-Fi, with captive portal for your guests to make your restaurant or cafe a little bit more attractive.
And in times where menu is anyway always only online, I think Wi-Fi is very important for some customers.
For sure, there is a QR code on the table. You have to take a picture of it, then you will be routed or directed to the menu card. But what happens if you don't really have a good LTE signal in your restaurant? Then you're struggling, and the answer will be get a proper Wi-Fi.
And nowadays it's so easy, so easy to do it, to set that. We will show you how it works. Let's zoom into the NWA 110AX. And Phil, I know you also brought one with you.
Yes.
I take it.
Thank you very much.
So let me hold it to the camera.
Before we start with that, I want to also emphasize the technology split, which you have talked about. This is also something which we recognize in the support campus as well, that a lot of the customer inquiries which are coming in are basically Wi-Fi 6 related or related to the portfolio, not necessarily to the issues which come with Wi-Fi 6 or in that sense anything around that, but rather the product portfolio is actually hitting like a bomb into the industry. So that means that the recommendation, of course, would be, in a cynical way, get your Wi-Fi 6 as fast as possible before the others get it. So, but it's just a trend. It's the same like 5G. Which is having a massive, upscaling throughout the industry. Just want to point it out. Now we go over to the NWA 110AX. So all of our devices are coming in this cardboard box, and when you open it up, you already got the first thing, which fell out, which is the warranty card, quick start guide, all these things. We have full-fledged user guides online available without any issues. You can download them through download.zyxel.com. However, I'll just lay this over here. So this is the device or the unit itself. I'll just pack it out of this coating over here. This is what it looks like. I'm just going to hold it a little bit into the camera, and you can see already it's a little bit different in its design than it used to be. Back then we had the small little round things, where we went over to a more, in my opinion, elegant design, but a little bit more sleek, a little bit more modern in that sense. And what I think is really good is the one LED system. You have to know, of course, the blinking patterns, the lighting patterns, but that way you're at least not looking like, oh, is it the 5th or the 6th light which is lighting up? So you only have one light, one color, and then you have to check what that color or what that lighting pattern indicates. That you can check in the user guide. So there's this unit itself. We got a wall mounting kit over here. Like the small plastic plate where you can just stuck it upon, and of course wall mounting screws and the material to mount it to the wall. And then what I think is not absolutely, it's not a given. You cannot take it for granted in nowadays days. Is the power supply unit, which I'm still leaving hacked, or I can actually get it out. It's like a fairly standard power supply unit. Nothing special, but we got a German or a European adapter, and we got the UK plugin on this particular device. I assume that depending on the region where you're purchasing this device, of course, you will get to the Spectrum plug. So that's not a given in the industry, as you told me recently. So that's nice.
But can you tell us a bit about how should I hang this to the wall? So is there any recommendation? Can I put it upside down, or that the cables are going up instead of down?
It really depends on the environment. How can I install an access point? Yeah. In general, it's really clear an access point has to be installed on the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
That's more or less a kind of must-have.
So that's a recommendation.
That's a recommendation,
right?
Because it has to do something with how the antennas are placed in the device itself. Yeah. But we also have some specs and access points that you can use it on the wall as well. Yeah. Where we have smart antennas, so the smart antenna technology, it's doing it automatically with algorithm behind it. We have dual optimized antenna that give us also the option to install the devices on the wall. Yeah, but in general, normal AP installation is going on the ceiling. Yeah, but we are all know and aware of it. Sometimes there is no possibility because maybe there's no cable connection until or under the ceiling. Yeah, or maybe it has to be hidden somewhere. Maybe if we talk about schools, maybe they have to be behind the panel or whatever. Yeah, where the pupils couldn't get in there and plug it off, or even through restrictions of the building with fire things and all the other stuff.
Can you give me the exact one for a second? I just want to, so your recommendation is definitely ceiling, no question. If that's not possible, I put it like this, to the wall.
Correct.
And I could put it like this, it doesn't matter too much.
Doesn't matter too much.
Correct. Thank you. And we are talking about Wi-Fi 6 today. How about Wi-Fi 6E? Are we going to implement that in coming devices?
It's in plan, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but we also need to have a look on the regulation side. Yeah, especially in Europe, we need to trigger which country Wi-Fi 6E is really allowed to broadcast and where it's forbidden. Yeah, so this is something on the legal side we need to look on it. Yeah. For example, in America, it doesn't really care. So for them, it's easier to launch Wi-Fi 6E instead of here in Europe. Yeah. So we have something on the roadmap for next year. Yeah. Not so early, but it is in plan. Yes.
Good. So we answered that question.
Okay.
That we are working on it. And now over to Phil.
Sorry. One more point before you ask the question, because and let us talk about the power adapter shortly. Yeah. We have competitors, I have to say it in that way, competitors in the low entry model, they are not really offering a power supply additional or add-on. So that means you have to buy it additionally. Yeah? That would means you have to pay more if you need a power adapter, because maybe you don't have a PoE switch or PoE injector.
Sure.
So please be aware and notice that our low entry model, the 110AX, has this power supply in there. If you need it or not, it doesn't care. Yeah, that's not our thing, but it's good to have it. Yeah, and to know it's already in there. So that's really another big benefit for us.
Phil, is there anything that we can do with the sound? I have two customers that are saying that the sound isn't very clear. Is there anything we can do about it? Let's check if we can do something about it.
Yeah. I'll probably go out of the window frame.
So thanks for the comment. We are working on it.
So we need to wait slots here.
The audio codec.
It says that it seems that our head mics are not used. Okay, so now it should be better. Yes, no, I think we should not see, but everybody, okay, we are very sorry for that. So thanks for asking questions and giving us feedback. So it's fixed now.
Okay.
Let us repeat the question. So one question was
Wi-Fi 6E.
Wi-Fi 6E, it's coming. Next year, we are evaluating the legal situation. And once we have done that, we will have new products for that. There was a question for how to hang it. If I hang it to the wall, It doesn't matter if it's normal hanging or upside down.
Correct.
Recommendation would be the ceiling. Yes.
But we also have special devices with smart antenna or dual optimized antenna where it's also possible to install it on the wall with the whole benefit of getting SSID. So that's also clear. So please have a chat with the CSO team or with the sales account in your region. Yeah, they will give you the offer and they will pick with you the right device as well.
Perfect. And now over to Phil, going to the NWA 110AX and drill it in a bit.
Exactly. Now, hopefully, with clear audio. So
yes.
Sorry again for that one. Yeah, we're taking a look at the NWA 110AX specifically, and in the range of our portfolio, it kind of, I would say, not competes, but it kind of has a certain relation to the 210AX. So we're doing a little bit of comparative measurements here, not too much into detail. So as you can see, we got this nice graph over there where we have the capacity, the coverage, and all of those different things. The most differentiating factor is the speed on the 5 gigahertz. And that is because of the spatial stream setup on the NWA 110AX compared to the 210AX, meaning that on one side, on the 110 model, you only have a 2x2 antenna pattern, while on the 210, you got a 4x4 antenna pattern. Of course, this comes with faster speed. This comes with, with more benefits, of course, but we're here talking about entry level. So we also have to set a prerequisite for this. Taking a look at the maximum speed theoretically reachable, which is 1.78 gigabit per second. Of course, this would in theory contradict the uplink LAN port, which is 1 gigabit per second. However, I want to clearly point out that there's not a lot of setups where I would use specifically more than 1 gigabit per second in a normal home networking environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So we're not talking about me loading like huge 4K video libraries. That would be something which would require certain backbone infrastructure anyways, like multi-gig switches and so on and so forth. But for your normal home situation, this will completely suffice. And I also made a test over here yesterday with two NWAX or with NWA 110AX set up over here, where I made a throughput test. This was the result over here, which I just get right out of my smartphone. No tricks, no hidden stuff. I just set up the Wi-Fi, just connected myself, went to fast.com, which is, by the way, a great page if you want to quickly check your internet speed connection, because it automatically does it. It's not like the Ookla speed test thing, which a lot of people use, where you have to use JavaScript and that stuff. You just go on fast.com, it directly shows you the speed and you're good. So as an explanation, we have here in the office a 500 megabit synchronous setup. So we got here basically 500 megabit as a maximum, and you might believe it or not, people are working here. So when I did my test, I was doing this during normal office times. I got 390 megabit per second. The other remaining 110 megabit per second, I personally would assume were people calling out, people doing tickets, and so on and so forth. So this shows you that if you have, let's say, a fast internet connection, you will reap the full benefits by using Wi-Fi 6 by getting that throughput. And I would assume if you have the backbone infrastructure and you have a NAS server where you want to, which you want to use as a media library and transfer big chunks of data, then that would also, of course, work very well with the Wi-Fi 6 setup. Yeah. As the next slide, I want to speak about captive portal, because you said that as a kind of as a side note, but I think that allows or that deserves more attention to it. Our devices through the bank can all be managed by Nebula Cloud Management System or by the Nebula Cloud Center. And within this Nebula Cloud Center, we also have the possibility of setting up a smaller Nebula captive portal. So that is very interesting for small businesses or maybe even maybe home setups where you actually want people to come in as a guest, and you want them, maybe you're having a big party and you want to make a fancy captive portal or something. Hey, welcome to my birthday party, here, log into the Wi-Fi. I don't know. There are a plethora of different situations. We have prepared basically a hands-on lab in the background where I want to show you the captive portal, which I will do in a bit. But I first want to talk about the Nebula management setup in general before I then go over to the captive portal. So I'll grab the mouse over here because I hate touchpads for the sake of my life. And I'll go now out of the presentation and onto my Nebula control center. So we will not dive in too deep what it is all about, how to make an account or something. We set this as a prerequisite that you know about Nebula kind of. And if not, we of course already had tech talks around this and have tutorials and
knowledge-based content, all
exactly.
those things.
Yeah, so first off, Nebula is our cloud solution platform. And once you logged in and you set an organization and a site, that's the hierarchy of the setup. So you got organizations, which contain sites, which contain devices. You can add your devices by organization-wide, configure, license, and inventory, then go to the device tab, and here you add your MAC address and your serial number. It will automatically identify which device is there, what license status is applicable to this device, and then add this to the organization for you to then go over here to checkbox this, go to the actions, and then click on change site assignment, allowing you to assign it to a site. I already did this in the background, of course. So I got my TECHtalk Wi-Fi 6 site over here where my two NWA AX110 devices are here embedded. And now let's go very quickly to the captive portal before I actually talk about SSID setup so that we kind of finish off that topic.
I think you can mention that captive portal is a free feature in Nebula.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's most of the features which you will see, and I think every feature which I'm using here in my setup is actually free. Of course, there are some some license features as usual, but I think especially considering the competition, we have a very good feature set of free versus paid stuff. But I think Patrick will in the end also talk about that a little bit more. Let me show you just simply how I set up the captive portal. So we set up an SSID. We'll talk about that later. We just take that as a prerequisite and then move into the captive portal customization. So we add this captive portal setup to the SSID, and here's what we're talking about. So on this SSID CP, so you saw that maybe in the slides that the captive portal name was actually named the same way. So here we can set up different themes. So we got kind of different default themes, you could say. Here you can even embed your own logo. Yeah, I unfortunately do not have a file which matches criteria, and I was a little bit lazy in creating one, so apologies for that. But you could, in theory, just take your own company logo, set it up in there, like, hey, welcome to my birthday party, or what we had as an example. And over here, you can make a welcome message for the people who are entering that captive portal, as well as a success page message where you can have a nice message delivered when they logged into the captive portal. Scrolling down to the very bottom, you even have the so-called promotion URL feature, which I think is really cool for especially these small businesses which want to cater towards a certain, let's say, customer insecurity when it comes to Wi-Fi. So they want to kind of show, hey, we're professional about what we're doing over here. We want you to have a good feeling using our stuff. And a nice thing, which is embedded in these captive portals, is you're being navigated to the page after.
Yes.
So you're not in the void and you're just looking at the blank stare of the World Wide Web, but instead you're actually being redirected somewhere as a starting point, and from there on you can do your own journey by surfing.
And I think this is the best way to say if you're looking into small cafes, restaurants. Here in Germany, we removed the menu cards on the tables and have a QR code on there. Yeah, and like I mentioned in my introduction, maybe you had a bad Wi-Fi connection or LTE device, LTE connection on your smartphone. Maybe you can't really use the QR code scanner on your smartphone and get redirected to the menu card because your signal on your smartphone is too low. Yeah, so to have a proper Wi-Fi in there would be the best solution, and in the cafe, that's really clear. But after you offering this open or this guest Wi-Fi, and you have this redirect to the promotion URL, that would means you routed them directly to the menu card. Yeah,
correct.
So this is a real nice benefit, and like Phil already mentioned, it's a free feature set on Nebula. Yeah, so that means you don't really need invest too many money or too much money in getting a proper Wi-Fi in a small cafe or restaurant to give a benefit to the customers and even to showing the menu card. Yeah, so this is a real nice benefit. Yeah, and but this is, you can enroll it in each at the end in each project scenario. Yeah, so we don't really need to talk about small cafes, retail stores, or whatever. You can adopt it easily into small businesses, but even into education parts. Yeah, where you're offering a guest Wi-Fi for the pupils or whatever. Yeah, so that's a really
that's
nice
very
benefit.
very nice feature, just to push your customers into the direction you would like to see them.
Correct.
Perfect.
So first of all, I want to apologize that I just left the screen. I went and grabbed the power supply, so we're not getting cut off over here, just so that the people understand what's going actually on. Okay, thank you very much for pointing that out and taking that a little bit deeper.
Sure.
Now I would like to talk about the generic scenario which I built up, or the general setup which I built up. So we got two NWA 110AX sitting here on the table. One is being the root access point, and one is being set up with Smart Mesh, which is, I think, something which is very interesting for the people out there, because you don't have LAN cables laying everywhere, and you don't want to have them visible everywhere laying around in case you don't have the cabling. So I set them up to be in a Smart Mesh scenario. First, I want to show that it's actually working, and it's actually working as a mesh, and how that looks like when the Nebula Control Center decides to load. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, especially since I have this page open since, I think, 8 o'clock or something. So maybe I'll just go ahead now and just simply refresh it.
No.
Oh, well, okay. Speaking of the devil, it's now there. So we got the NWA, which is set as a root access point. So that has a fully colored symbol, while the repeater access point, or the mesh access point, has basically this hollowed out colored thing. Both are online, both are ready to go, and that shows you it's working, which is really cool, to actually being able to show that this works, because this is something which a lot of people struggle with. Just a small hint, because we have so many people who actually have struggles with it. How do I set this up? I personally went ahead, I registered the devices first, then I went one by one, setting the access points actually in a root position so that they just synchronize with the Nebula Control Center. I then always go ahead and upgrade to the latest firmware immediately. So that's my first step before I do anything. I wait for that firmware upgrade to load, and then I take the other one. Yeah. And after that is finished, and after both of them have, the configuration that they're supposed to be Smart Mesh, where I set this up as a prerequisite, I will show you in a minute. And then after this, let's say, configuration firmware update has been done one by one, then I spread out the Smart Mesh. Yeah. So just that you all out there are aware of how I do that. Where can I set this up? I can navigate to access point, configure, APN port settings, and this small slider is the all-defining thing. So it's just off by default. You just have to turn it on before you do that entire process of actually plugging in the devices and making them online. That's at least my go-to. And over here, by clicking on the model list, you can actually see, and that's also an important message to convey, Smart Mesh is supported by all models. So through the entire bank, all the devices which are embeddable in Nebula have Smart Mesh. Wireless bridge is a different setup, is a different thing, is a different animal in itself. So, so much speaking about that. Now let's talk about Wi-Fi 6. Or is there a question?
No,
okay.
not yet.
Okay. So talking about Wi-Fi 6 in a general sense, how do I get this set up? What I want to set up is basically, I want to navigate to access point, configure, radio settings, because my standards which I'm using are dependent on the radio, or this is something which I set up on the radio module. So when I scroll down to the very bottom of this setup, I have the possibility to set up the radio mode of every single access point, of every single radio module, of every single access point. So normally this is set to auto, which is fine for most of the cases. I think if you have a Wi-Fi 6 access point and you're leaving it as auto, it will most likely choose Wi-Fi 6, so the AX standard. But what happens if I have like a mixed topology where I have some wave 2, maybe even normal N standards, and then I have Wi-Fi 6 embedded. So auto is not enough control for my personal taste. I like to really know what I'm setting up. So I went here over here, and I just went ahead and set the radio mode to a static setup for every single radio module for every single access point. You can also do that in bulk, by choosing that and then doing the edit thing. You can navigate here between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and here you can see actually that I already changed it for everything. I even went ahead and set it up for another wave 2 access point over here that I statically set up the BGN and the AC standard here on 5 gigahertz, respectively on 2.4 gigahertz. So that is the first setting where I'm defining actually, this is now Wi-Fi 6, Then I went over to access point, configure, SSID overview, and I created my actual SSIDs. Regarding this tag, we will come to that in a minute because I did this in the aftermath because I didn't have an idea around this. So here I went ahead and I created 4 different, but we'll just ignore this one for the moment. I created 3 different Wi-Fi 6 SSIDs. One which is my normal, let's say, only pre-shared key secured Wi-Fi, which would be, let's say, my home Wi-Fi, then, or my normal employee Wi-Fi, so to speak. Then I have the captive portal setup over here, the SSID, the captive portal, which I just shown. So I basically kind of fetched before we actually went into this regarding the captive portal because it was in the slide. And I also have the AD setup over here, which we will discuss in a few slides. So that's something for later on. As you can see, this is tagged with Wi-Fi 6 through the bank. On this one, on the other hand, I called this TECHtalk Wi-Fi 5, and I tagged this a little bit differently with Wi-Fi 5. And the reason why I did this is with Wi-Fi 6 comes WPA3. WPA3 is the latest security standard when it comes to pre-shared key authentication. And other than Wi-Fi 6, which is backward compatible, WPA3 not necessarily is. So I had also seen issues where the customers could not really use that because of compatibility issues. That's the word I'm searching for. So, but I don't want to sacrifice this. I don't want in a mixed setup. I don't want to make any compromise on security. Not nowadays. Never actually. So what I did is I tagged these SSIDs with the Wi-Fi 6, while I made a differentiator on the Wi-Fi 5, which uses WPA2 instead of WPA3, and this has Wi-Fi 5. How do we tag this? You have to go to access point, monitor access point, then you select the access points which you want to tag respectively, go over here to tag, and here you can put an existing or a new tag in there. I just went for Wi-Fi 6, which is now already existing. And by clicking on the add button, then in the aftermath, you're adding another tag, which is then looking like this. So just that the people out there understand my thoughts and my thought processes around this, what I'm setting up so far. But this is kind of a very quick wraparound how I would set up an optimal Wi-Fi situation. There were some few scenarios which we discussed before where this could be applicable. Maybe you want to mention one where this tagging might be applicable. You got it on your mind?
Not really. Yeah, so you totally grabbed me.
all good. No, sorry for that.
Too many thoughts at the moment. So
no, so Patrick had a very good clue back, like before we had this conversation regarding voice over Wi-Fi.
Sure, but that jumps. So maybe that makes sense if you go into the threshold.
That's absolutely correct.
So maybe you go ahead, and then when we go to the threshold, then we catch it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I would say this is kind of the generic setup which I went for. This hopefully makes sense to the people out there. If there are any questions around this, we can of course discuss. I would now open the presentation again, move over to the next topics, and then we will anyways guide a little bit deeper into the topic.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, you're right. We will have a question around that. We have a solution window still. just to mention it, if you have a question, please raise it. And when we talked about earlier, I would like to emphasize again. So when we talked about earlier, gigabit networks, yeah. So home gigabit networks, yeah, we are streaming 4K, 8K videos. We could emphasize that we also have small gigabit switches for home users, use environment, you could say. So we are having kind of a full portfolio, giving our customers a possibility also for a lower scale environment to have all the latest technology implemented. I just want to mention that again. Good. Going to next slide. Yes. So we have two areas that we will still talk about. One is the solution window. And nowadays, and we want to talk about the company network, how to make it more secure. And Phil, I've seen our neighbor company actually, when I look through the door, they have their SSID and their Wi-Fi password written there on the board. So everybody that comes in that needs this information can grab it from there, and then they are in their network. I think it's a bit unsecure, to be honest. What could I do? What else could I do to ensure the security in my network?
So I would agree to your sentiment that that's a little bit unsecure. I'll grab the mouse again because touchpads. I'll close again the presentation and go into the Nebula Cloud Center because that is something which I kind of touched the surface upon. We have in Nebula the possibility to set up, even on the access points, on the SSIDs, an authentication towards a radio server. Yeah. So basically, when you go to the access point setup on the SSID overview, let's just go there for a minute. We can see on this SSID that we have something which is sign on with radio server. Where do I find this menu? I can either click on edit, or another way is going to access point, configure, and then the SSID settings, and then choosing my respective SSID. And here I already kind of pre-prepared, actually a double thing, my radio server. So instead of signing on with the Nebula Cloud authentication, how you would do it with a captive portal, for example, I have chosen my radio server, and that pops up this section over here where I can actually define very generic radio server credentials or setups. Yeah, so I can define the host IP, I can define the ports for radios that would be the standard 1812, and also the radio secret. There are, of course, other things which you might want to talk about in regards of licensing, like the radius accounting. That's a license feature. There are reasons for that. Yeah, maybe you want to say something around licensing in Nebula in general.
In general, so if we look into Nebula in general, yeah, more or less, I would say Nebula is for free. Yeah, 80% of the features that are we offering to our partners is free. Yeah, so if you're looking into specific features like this radio accounting, yeah, this is something you have to pay for it. But the good thing is we changed our license system by beginning of this year. It was around April, yeah. So we changed our license system and even the payment, yeah. So even the payment or the license that you have to pay looks more attractive to our partners, maybe as it was before, yeah. So even in that case, we are still working on it, yeah. Nebula is growing and growing by every release with new feature sets, but on each new Nebula release, more or less the feature sets are for free, yeah. So there's only some limitations, yeah, that has to be paid. And if you compare it to other vendors, I think we are in a really pretty good shape what we are offering for our customers for free.
Exactly.
Can we also use an AD server, radio server outside in our network for this additional security?
Yes, sure. I think this is the radius accounting where you have to do the extra payment. Yeah. So that would means.
So I have my service somewhere in the headquarters, and then I have a satellite site. I want to make sure they're perfect. So
I mean, there are a plethora of different options out there. I've seen people using VPNs, for example, to get that going.
Yeah.
When you have a VPN, then basically the normal radio server should also suffice because the routing already is taken care. Radius accounting, of course, makes sense when you have that accounting feature and you want to actually extrapolate the information from that specific client. I mean, for very specific things, there's, we are in the background here in the support organization to help out with that if there are any questions. But I think like fairly generic stuff in regards of Radius server setup can be done. And this coming back to the solution window thing is actually enhancing the security. Like I'm not letting people just in for the sake by just reading, like a password, which is openly distributed, but I have my user database set over there. Only they can log in and I'm only allowing them in. So I think that's already a massive benefit for the network.
I would say back to the topic about SSID security. Yeah. In that case, with using radio server additionally to the SSID, that means it's a two-way authentication.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you have the SSID with the pre-shared key.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the second step is the radio server behind it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's a two-way authentication in that way. And this is also even more secure than just having a company SSID with pre-shared key only, because the question will be, how often do you change the pre-shared key on your company SSID? People are coming, people are leaving. Yeah, if you share this key and maybe the guy had it in mind, so what he can do, he can sit in front of your company connecting to the SSID because he knows the pre-shared key and there's no other security behind it. So he's in the SSID of the company. Yeah, so it's a question of security.
There's a question also from our customers here that are asking if they want to connect to the network with their laptop, let's say, if they can, instead of the pre-shared key, only use their email address and password to log in.
So in theory, that should be possible. Just taking a very short notice on this. What you would do is you set up this as an open network, and then there are different options how you would use the email thing. So you could, in theory, think about an external radios where you would again use the radios authentication. We have customers who actually are using that one.
Absolutely.
Or if you, there's also within the Nebula captive portal authentication with the cloud authentication, there's also an option where you can set the email address and the username, and you can decide if the customer is supposed to log in through the email address or the user. Let me just shortly show this. So when you go to site wide and then to configure, and then on the cloud authentication, here you got the user database. Let's just add one in there. I'll just make max@zyxel.com. Yeah. Username would be Max. Yeah. And here you got the password. Let's just say admin1234. Oh, okay. Doesn't matter. Mistypo. So here you can say that this is an authorized user. So yes, that user is active from day one or from second one. And here you can say login by email or the username, or both.
Right.
So I think that this kind of goes into the direction of the question being asked.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. There's another question that's asking for a simple definition when we talk about Ethernet failover in a Wi-Fi environment.
Ethernet failover in a Wi-Fi environment. Simple definition is a little bit hard. It's also a little bit complex to cover right now on the fly. It's basically when you are in a smart mesh mode, it's trying to prevent loops from happening through the network. It's trying to indicate automatically whether or not the device is in a smart mesh setup, or if it's, let's say, in a root access point setup. So there are some algorithms and mechanisms which are behind that, which we all learned about, but which half of that is a little bit forgotten, and I would have to refresh, to be fair. So if there's more interest in this, then I rather recommend creating a support ticket, then we can check that up. But basically, it's from a customer perspective, it's just a slider. Either you have it on or you have it off, and the mechanisms behind that are too complex and also too far off topic to directly dive into them.
It depends a bit on the setup and so on.
Exactly.
So our recommendation there is definitely to talk to us directly. write us a request and we will get back to you. If there are still open questions to that. So I hope we answered that question anyway.
Okay.
Good. Going back to the presentation, thank you, Phil, for the details around how to make my network secure, more secure. Maybe that hint we should give to our neighbor company, and then they are a bit more safe on that. So
maybe they should use Zyxel hardware.
maybe they are using already, but I don't know. But at least I find it a bit strange when they're sharing these kind of things. So we are a big fan of feedback. If you have feedback, the email address is mentioned there. Please do so. And we got feedback from David asking for roaming experience, how to improve my roaming experience. So I'm running around. I have my old mobile, and I noticed that if I'm 100 meters down the floor, it's still hanging on the first AP that when I entered the office. So how can I change that? How can I improve that it's seamless going from one AP to the other?
So I will start directly saying that this is my favorite kind of topic revolving around Wi-Fi, because it's super easy to fix.
Right.
It's a little bit I wouldn't say sophisticated to know about it, but you just have to know about it in order to set this up. So let's start by explaining the theory behind this. So the roaming process, for anybody who's not aware of this, is the change when I move from access point A to access point B, basically. This is something which is always triggered by the client itself. Yeah, technologically, that's the foundations of it. The client decides whether or not Wi-Fi signal is good enough or not. However, clients tend to stick to the access point which is giving them Wi-Fi, because they don't, for the sake of their life, want to give away any of the mobile data. So they just clinch upon the access point, never leaving it. And this is, let's say, referred to as sticky clients. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to reverse the responsibility or the roles of who's deciding whether or not a client is connected or not. And this is done through something which is in, like the terminology is RSSI thresholds or RSSI threshold values. We call them station association threshold, station disassociation threshold. You might be familiar from access point controllers, hardware devices, that there's a function out there, and we will now discover how we can actually use this. So going back out of the presentation and going back into Nebula. So when I go to the access point to configure and then to the radio settings, I already prepared this because this is something which I first off recommend every single customer who's having Wi-Fi. Yeah. In 95% of the cases where roaming is actually the root cause, this is helping them. And this is for me a best practice. On every single access point I get, boom, first thing I do, roaming. So you scroll down over here on Nebula, and over here you will see smart steering. This is turned off by default. So you want to turn this on, or you first want to, of course, edit the values to your likings. So you click on advanced options. And normally these values are set to -82 or -88 dBm. I changed this to -75 and -80 dBm because this was a reference I have been taught in my very beginnings of networking, that iPhones, one of the, let's say, industry leading devices, are having their disassociation threshold at -80 dBm. Anyways, it's not that much of a big difference. So if you are, if you are very insecure on what to set up, just leave it as it is. The values are totally fine. My personal recommendation is being a little bit more intolerant towards, let's say, sticky client behavior. Just as an explanation, a little bit technical over here. This is anyways a logarithmic function, like dBMs are measured in logarithmic scales, meaning that if I keep the same distance and I move back that same distance, the uprise of the dBm value will be exponential. So that means over here I got -75, 1 meter away I got -80, and 1 meter even farther away I got -90 dBm. So, and then that goes like rapidly up. And at some point in time, of course, the client will give up and say, hey, I got no Wi-Fi, so I do that. But way too late. So that's why we got these values. Yeah, so smart steering would be one option. There are also other options out there which you can set up in the SSID security settings, which is 802.11r and 802.11k/v. I personally, however, would not recommend this because there still are, up to this day, certain bulks of clients which have issues with one or the other. So if you go for 802.11r, which is the fast roaming setup, then you will have maybe a certain branch of clients or vendors which will have problems with this. So it's not really adaptable to, to a generic setup. If you go over to K/V, then you will have the same problem on the other side. Both kind of do a very similar thing. They massively increase the roaming speed, or they narrow down the roaming gap to I don't know, milliseconds or microseconds actually. So it's seamless. This is not seamless, but very quick. So if I have a Skype call, for example, if it's like a casual chat, then it might be a short blur and it directly catches up again. But on this one, that's the one which I catch you off guard. You want to bring up a good example.
Yes, so now I got your point, and I'm totally here. Another example where you can set this values on a station signal threshold, and where you really need to keep an eye on it. It's voice over Wi-Fi scenarios. Yeah, if you have a call and you're running down the floor. Yeah, so the signal threshold values should be closer. Yeah, as maybe you already said here, because if you have a high value and you're walking down the floor with your smartphone or with your telephone, yeah, then it can happen that it comes to disconnections, or the call breaks down, or there's a delay. Yeah, and so this is really a special case where you have to set up in general an own voice over Wi-Fi SSIDs, where only the clients, the smartphones or the phones are in there, and then you have to set up these thresholds in a really low or short value. Yeah, exactly. And I think where you now will jump on, it's your idea with the tags behind, and this give us a clear picture of your story you want to tell us.
Exactly. So my idea, so this was rather an idea which evolved out of the conversation. So I already made the tags, and then we came to the idea, hey, this is like the perfect prime example why I would use these tags to separate the SSIDs like I did before. So I will just recap and go to that menu again so people can see what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this over here. Now let's just imagine we want to actually use 802.11r because we know our phones are compatible with this feature. I would just go ahead, create an own SSID, which is only for the telephones, set up 802.11r in the SSID settings. So I'm not really messing around with the normal generic internet. Via the tags, I'm defining that only particular access points could have this, like maybe through the hallways where people are actually running and phoning or something, in that sense, to avoid too much interference. So this is where let's say the gears are kind of gripping into each other and making like a perfect oiled machinery out of it. So, and this is where I think where Nebula kicks in as showing its core benefits at its best, because it's designed to tackle all the different let's say all the different scopes of issues you can face. You have like a super flexible setup, something which eventually you would not have if you would go with more specific and tailored to a certain scenario, like in standalone mode. In standalone mode, you would maybe say, okay, I'm taking away the tagging because this is anyways for home use. I don't need this. And then you would already have that issue. So that's maybe one prime example where Nebula really shines and where also these possibilities are really shining.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's go to the presentation again. So that was our feedback session. And please, I always invite you to give feedback to us. And just to show you a couple of more information. So first of all, we have our SSO login for our support portal, partner portal, and Campus Academy. If you haven't seen any of those, then please create your login and visit them. And we also have some special discounts and so on the Campus Academy at the moment if you want to learn about our products. So I recommend to go there. Our next Tech Talk will be on the 15th of December, talking about cybersecurity best practices. We want to give you an overview of what could be done, and we'll then drive in further parts, part 2, part 3, in particular features that we want to share with you that really makes your network very, very secure. Then just to mention it again, if you have problems or if you have challenges in configuring certain things, but you do want to do it and you're not afraid to ask, then we offer you also the value-added services, configuration services. For example, if you want to do a VPN or a more complex setup, then please reach out to us and we can help you for that. So this is beyond the normal support activities, and therefore we sell these kind of vouchers so that you have the possibility to talk to one of our agents anytime, as much as you like. So that's very important. We would like to help you as much as possible. And you can follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. We are creating all the time some new videos about products and the like. And having said that, I think we have the last slide. Thank you very much, Patrick, for coming around.
Thank you for joining.
Phil, preparing all these details, presentation, and the devices. And thank you very much to you for joining us today, and hope to see you next time. Stay healthy and goodbye.
Bye.